This is Gandilf. And yes, that is Dilf at the end of his name. Gandilf was just your normal, everyday Joe in the lands of Baldur's. Unfortunately, he believed a free lunch scam, and instead of getting booze in his belly, he got impregnated by aliens. Gandilf, however, didn't want to give a painful birth, but more importantly, he doesn't want to pay for child support, so he tries to escape the alien hospital ward. Gandilf comes across a sphincter door. He is thoroughly revolted by the door, but makes a joke about his ex-wife's sphincter looking similar to the one in front of him. He plays with the door imagining his ex, but then continues on. Gandilf comes across a corpse, and his first action was to disrespect the body and loot it. Unfortunately, there's no booze, but he picks up some gold. He moves on and meets Lae'zel, another person scammed by the free lunch. She tells Gandalf that she wants to sue the criminals, but first they must get off the hospital before they get charged, and they don't have insurance. However, the marketing team is back and attempts to stop them, offering a full buffet dinner if they stayed. Lae'zel was having none of it though, and immediately rushed to kill the marketing imps. But the player fumbled the controls and made her attack thin air instead. I hope this doesn't become a common problem throughout the game. Gandalf gave out an exasperated sigh, then proceeded to
Eldritch Blast!
All over the enemy, landing this first hit of the game and nearly killing the imp. The brawl became a victory for the duo, and without breaking a sweat. They move forward and meet Shadowheart, who has been shut inside the MRI while the imps drain her bank account for the health service they're providing. Gandalf easily unravels the magical lock on the door, and the two watch Shadowheart fall onto the floor without helping her at all, because they thought it would be funny. The trio continued, and they discovered that the scam team had actually turned on one another. A manager explains that someone has stolen Justin Bieber's Bored Ape NFT and has cut the internet cable so they can't take it back. The manager mistakes the party as his employees and commands them to reconnect the internet cable at the end of the room. Thus, the party joins the fray. Shadowheart also misses her very first attack, and Gandalf felt secondhand embarrassment so hard that he regrets letting Shadowheart be free. The party pushes towards the captain of the NFT thieves, but once they notice that they can't even damage the armor of the boss, they decided to focus on the objective instead. Gandalf, who channels power coming from a great fae, put the enemy mob to sleep. With most enemies asleep or killed, it was an easy victory. Shadowheart connected the internet back, but the NFT thieves brought a dragon to burn the base down and cover up the evidence. Fortunately, she maintains the connection and the scam team gets teleported to who knows where. In our second episode of Baldur's Gate 3, Gandalf falls off the scam hospital. His death would have been certain. But a mysterious force stops him from falling from the lethal height, but not enough to at least lay him down gently without a broken neck. Gandalf wakes up to find himself in the beach episode of this playthrough, although there is a noticeable lack of anime girls in swimsuits. Gandalf ends up finding Shadowheart, but although she is a girl, she is not 2D, so he instead becomes more interested in the artifact she is holding. Unfortunately, his kleptomania is foiled by Shadowheart waking up, who didn't take kindly to her possessions being stolen. While she was unhappy with Gandalf's behavior, they were still not safe, so she decided to stay with him as they tried to find a way back to civilization. Gandalf still didn't get the artifact from Shadowheart though, but was content to loot bodies in hopes of getting some beer. He didn't. The duo runs into some creatures called intellect devourers, and they're designed to be dangerous in close range, but are not a threat with ranged attacks. Unfortunately, the player seems to have no intellect in the first place and let the duo stand their ground, resulting in Gandalf getting knocked out. Gandalf gets better though, and eventually the duo wins the very messy fight. With the party critically injured, the player discovers the short rest mechanic and decides to heal up using it. The player then stupidly decides to destroy an explosive barrel, putting the party at critical health again and wasting another short rest. The duo runs into Astarion, and Astarion swiftly gets kinky with Gandilf, pinning him down on the floor. While Gandalf had gallivanted with such kinks before, he had to teach Astarion to ask for consent first, so he literally gave Astarion a piece of his mind by headbutting the elf. Gandalf successfully fended off Astarion because the elf is a giant wussy. Astarion realizes that Gandalf and him were in the same problem, so he decides to join the party. This action also gave a level up to the whole party, so the player decides to use the level up. In particular, Gandalf got both Agonizing Blast and Repelling Blast, making
Eldritch Blast!
a powerful repeatable spell. Gandalf immediately tries his new power on a poor pig that got popped into pieces. The party moves on and discovers a dying Mind Flayer from the scam team. Gandalf thought of just immediately killing the Mind Flayer, but wanted information, so he decided to walk up and interrogate the dying monster. But the scammer had one more trap for Gandalf. The scammer revealed that she was an e-girl, and if Gandalf subscribes to become a Tier 1 OnlyFans by giving her his mana, she will give him the hottest makeout session ever. Gandalf is, of course, a grizzled, experienced and wise internet veteran, so obviously he immediately falls into the honey trap presented to him. Gandalf leans in for the kiss, and the player, incredulous, just stood up from his chair and started laughing across the room, while the hottest and most intimate scene ever happened between Gandalf and the Mind Flayer. It's so hot that we can't show on YouTube, and not because we're just lying to you. In fact, no amount of censorship will make it viewable just because of how intimate and raw it is. The intense action led to Gandalf being elated, fulfilled, and dead. This left the two people alive to deal with an enemy 4 levels above them, can attack telepathically, and has recovered from their injuries. With the player being new at the game, the Mind Flayer easily wiped the party. Fortunately, the game autosaved back at the beach, so for Gandalf, it was all a bad dream. But for the player, they just lost 30 minutes of progress, so they decided to end the session. In this third episode of Baldur's Gate 3, the player speedruns back to the Mind Flayer, and Gandalf does what he should have done in the first place. The party moves on and meets a human stuck inside a magic portal. Gandalf uses magic to free the human, and out of the portal comes Gale the Wizard. Gale is also another scam victim and thus joins the party in search of a cure for his male Emperich problem. The player gave the evocation subclass for no particular reason. The party also finds Lae'zel trapped by 2 people. Lae'zel was being a total dick, but Gandalf easily tricked her captors into leaving her alone. Gandalf breaks the cage and frees Lae'zel. She explains that villages with her kind has a way to purify the impending scam baby out of the whole party, and that there is a Githyanki village nearby. Naturally, the player, who doesn't care about the well-being of these bunch of misfits, made Gandalf start exploring for side quests instead of finding the village. The party runs into looters, who were ready to fight, but Gandalf tricks them too, scaring them to run off. They continue on to enter the ruins the looters were in, and discover a trap waiting for them, so the player decides to long rest for the first time. This is Delitru's first time ever seeing the characters in more casual clothes, and he greatly appreciates the effort in making more clothes for everyone. Gandalf continues on and the looters spot the party, but Gandalf also spots a suspicious lever right before the battle starts. The player also noticed an AI quirk regarding sleeping enemies. If an enemy falls asleep, other AI enemies will prioritize shoving the sleeping enemy awake, usually at the cost of their actions, and putting them out of position. That meant that by putting one person to sleep, 2 enemies end up losing turns. And thus poor Andorn here was put to sleep every turn, while his teammates move out of position to wake him up. With the enemy team split in half, Astarion closed the door. This locks out the 2 enemy archers out of the fight. Shadowheart one-shots the mage that ran out of position. And Gandalf puts Andorn to sleep for the 3rd time, and forcing another enemy unit to shove up his fist up Andorn's backside. Andorn is put to sleep again for the 4th time, and again another enemy wastes their turn waking him up. He is put again to sleep for the 5th time. But this time, Shadowheart kills one enemy and Gale lands a critical hit on the last one. By the time Andorn wakes up, all his friends are dead. And so is he. With everyone outside the door dead, Gandalf opens the door and cleans up the last two enemies without much difficulty. They then proceeded deeper into the crypt that looters wanted to get into. Unfortunately, Astarion failed to open the door with the last lockpick, so the party also can't go deeper and have to turn back and do the main quest. In this episode of Baldur's Gate 3, we run into a fight between goblins and some refugees. A man named Will dashingly came to rescue the refugees by violently murdering two goons. The fight breaks out, but the party one-shots most enemies, with Gandalf sniping down enemies one after the other. After the fight, we meet Zevlor, the gatekeeper, and something like a leader to the refugees. His people, the Tieflings, opened up a portal to the Minecraft Nether at their capital city, causing endless amounts of zombies and monsters to pour out, and destroying the city as well. He chose the Emerald Glade as a place to flee, but unfortunately dangerous enemies such as goblins also flocked to the glade, threatening the lives of not only the refugees, but the local druids as well. The druids want to erect a magic barrier to keep everyone else out, which will save the druids, but not the Tieflings. Zevlor asked us to talk with the druids for a solution, but we can't promise anything with our current scam problem threatening to kill us anytime. Zevlor understands, and we make way into their base to rest. Inside, Gandalf meets a few people along the way, including a captured goblin, who zealously tells about their belief on the totally hot new religion and not a cult of the Absolute, and Volo, a Fox News reporter, and a child, who Gandalf happily bullies because bullying is entertaining. The child tries to steal from Gandalf by distracting him with a free item, but Gandalf shows off that he, too, can use magic tricks, and spots the second child who was going to do the thievery. Gandalf made her cry and run away. He then tries to confront the first child, but respected the child's wit and balls to steal, so he lets them continue their scam. Gandalf continues on to meet Kaga, the leader of the druids, and who was also bullying a child. Kaga and Gandalf found mutual respect for bullying children, and Gandalf easily convinces Kaga to let the child go so that she can traumatize the Tord more. Kaga then surprises the player, as she was actually a reasonable leader and asks Gandalf's strong party to lead the refugees to another safe place. Unfortunately, this still doesn't solve our scam problem, so we turn down her request. We do meet the healer Nettie though, and after she asks us to KYS with bottled poison, tells us that the worm that impregnated us is special and she can't take it out, but their kidnapped leader, Hal Sin, might be able to. With no other additional leads, Gandalf takes up this quest, but before leaving town, decides to sell off the loot that he got. Unfortunately, the player also sold Gandalf's clothes, which meant that Gandalf showed off his true Dilf status and will spend the next episode naked. The player also forgot to talk to Wold because he's an idiot.
In the previous episode of Baldur's Gate 3, I made a mistake in the script and implied that Will was a dumb person. I would like to apologize because I don't think that Will is a dumb person, and I would like to thank our sponsor, Raid.
Sorry for interrupting your fake ad sponsor, but we're continuing Gandalf's journey. Gandalf continues past the Tiefling base and sees a refugee party wiped out by goblins in the fort in front. The player decides to avoid the fort's entrance for now because the player is a wuss, and Gandalf starts stealing everything he can from the dead bodies. The party runs into a dog, and they let him stay at their camp, becoming the party's first pet. The party runs into a pig that has all of its blood sucked out. Immediately, the elf, who is pale-skinned, fanged, and dressed in black goth clothes, said that everything's fine and we shouldn't camp here for the night. So the player immediately camped here for the night. Gandalf goes to sleep, but wakes up upon sensing Astarion ready to bite at Gandalf's neck. The player is disappointed that Gandalf can only act surprised, as if Astarion's pale skin, fangs, and black goth clothes were not enough hints that he may be a vampire. Astarion explains that he was forced to become a vegan vampire. His master fed him only the blood of animals, and not sapient creatures, which kept him alive, but still weak, hungry, and lacking in essential vitamins to become a healthy boy. Astarion begs to Gandalf, asking if he can suck some blood so that he can be healthy and sharp for the fights ahead. A normal person would refuse a request from someone they barely knew and had just broken their trust, but the player has been fed on a steady diet of romance vampire novels like Twilight and Vampire Knight, and immediately made Gandalf into a snack. Gandalf allowed Astarion to take a decent amount of blood from him. And the next morning, Astarion is much healthier, but Gandalf is a little weakened. The rest of the party discovers Astarion being a vampire, and they're fine with him as long as they keep his fangs to himself. The party wonders why Astarion doesn't have the drawbacks of being a vampire, such as being weak to sunlight, but Astarion himself isn't sure, and is just happy that he doesn't have those problems. The party then finds themselves in an owlbear cave, and Gandalf drinks up a potion of animal speaking that he found in a grotto inside the cave. Gandalf tries to talk to the owlbear, but messes it up, causing the beast to attack. The owlbear is no match for the party though, and it is slain. The owlbear's child begins to immediately eat its mother, and the party, disgusted, steps away. Miraculously, Gandalf finds clothes off a body the owlbear has slain, and he wears it immediately to end his Dilf episode. The party ventures forth and meets two people harassing an old lady. The two claim that she is a hag that kidnapped their sister, and Gandalf immediately called her out, forcing her to drop the act and teleport away in a puff of green smoke. The two men are perplexed and don't know what to do, but Gandalf decides to charge forward into the swamp. The player, however, is an idiot and trips every single trap possible, forcing the party to camp again. At camp, Astarion and Gandalf talks to one another, with Astarion jokingly asking Gandalf, if that Gandalf was a vampire, then which of the companions would he like to bite? The player, of course, chooses the gayest option, and Gandalf says he would like to taste Astarion the most. Astarion is flattered, but leaves the conversation at that, but the bleed status effect is still active and we get a hilarious shot of the two looking like wet cats. We continue on to find the witch's house. Immediately we see the girl kidnapped, but the hag, in another puff of green smoke, revealed themselves to be a razor sales middle manager, and the swamp is her domain, transforming into a razor store. This explains all the green colors, and Gandalf is immediately suckered into wanting the cool green RGB lights. The hag offers Gandalf a deal, the party lets the hag leave with the girl, and Gandalf gets razor RGB because that will make him a better gamer. Gandalf, who we've established to be a sucker for marketing at this point, immediately said yes. However, he failed to tell what kind of RGB he wants, so the hag maliciously complies and adds it on his right eye. Gandalf gains a cool glowing green eye that truly showed his epic gamer prowess, but reduced his charm with the ladies, and for some reason, feels like he wanted to start taking less showers. The hag and the lady both disappear, finally forcing the player to face the goblins and continue the main plot. On the 6th episode of our journey in Baldur's Gate 3, we continue the main quest to find Haslin the Druid, and run into the goblins guarding the castle where he's held hostage. Gandalf easily convinces the goblins that he's a senior manager of the scam team, and the goblins let our party pass safely. We move forward until a man teleports right in front of the party's faces. He yaps for quite an annoyingly long time. He eventually introduces himself as Raphael, something that he probably should have said before jamming gibberish down the party's ears. The player, who was bored and already was looking at his phone, wasn't paying attention to the conversation, and thus was surprised when Raphael teleports the party into a fancy dinner hall. The player was so surprised that he made Gandalf break character for a little bit, immediately demanding for Raphael to explain what's all this. Raphael obliges to explain, and transforms into the devil himself. Raphael is a creature of immense magical power, and offers to solve the party's problems. He claims that not only can he remove the scam baby growing in their bodies, but do it instantly and easily, just like snapping a finger. Gandalf will normally fall for scams, but not when he's literally facing the devil, so he taunts Raphael to do the procedure and remove the scam. To no one's surprise, Raphael doesn't do it. Instead, he asks Gandalf to explore the world, try to find a cure, become desperate to find there is none, and come back to Raphael only when the party is in unimaginable despair. Basically, he's like Professor Oak telling players they're going to have a grand adventure, but he's evil. We get kicked out of the mansion. Immediately, our companions voice their concerns about a devil tailing the party, and none of them want any deals with the devil. Gandalf agrees as well, and the party moves on. The party runs into magically infected hyenas, who were turning into deadly gnolls. The player, full of hubris, allows the hyena to fully transform into gnolls right in front of the party, instead of killing it on the spot. The gnolls come out of the hyenas, and there's more infected hyenas that will spawn more gnolls. A fight ensues, and at first, the gnolls seem to be a small and easy group to dispatch. However, one of the healthy hyenas ran away from the fight and got help from other nearby gnolls. With new gnolls spawning from the dying infected hyenas and the reinforcements coming in, there was just too many enemies. The party was eventually wiped out, and the player reloaded a save. It's almost as if this whole problem could have been avoided if the player just killed the hyenas first, but alas, regret comes last. The player, having learned nothing from the previous encounter, allowed the gnolls to spawn once again. And, once again, reinforcements were about to come. However, Shadowheart is the MVP and lands a 45% chance fire mode.
Pulls up, three-pointer. Bang! Bang! It's good!
Shadowheart nails it. The hyena dies, exactly one turn before the hyena reaches the reinforcements. We kill the rest of the gnolls, and by the skin of our teeth, somehow survive. We continue on to see a bridge full of carnage between gnolls and humans. Past the bridge was a house where human survivors of the attack stay. The humans were paladins who worshipped the god Tyr. They were hunting a female devil, but the devil escaped and their party was slaughtered by gnolls. Anders, one of the paladins, offered his sword in exchange for the devil's head, but the party was not interested in helping them. Gandalf decided to keep an eye out for the devil and move on. The party continues to find a burning mansion, and they immediately tried to help the people trapped inside the inferno. The main door was stuck close, and 4 people can't force it open. But Gandalf, the absolute Chad he is, managed to break the door to smithereens in a single kick. However, little did the party know that this was the last positive thing to happen. The house was on fire and several parts of the floor were burning. But the player completely forgot to use the virtual mouse mode to let the game move characters safely across terrain. Instead, he made the entire party walk on the fire, dealing massive amounts of damage. The player carelessly opens a door that was warned to be dangerous, and it explodes in front of Gandalf's face. The player rescues a person inside the blaze, but Shadowheart and the rescued person were cut off from the exit, and the others were in fatally low health. Shadowheart tries to escape by breaking down a locked door nearby, but the fire was just too strong, and the party starts to get cooked one by one. Astarion gets burned to a crisp, Gandalf gets cooked, and the rescued person gets toasted as he and Shadowheart exits the burning building. The player wasted an embarrassing amount of time and resources, and had he remembered to push the left analog stick to use the virtual mouse, most of the problems would have been solved. But he's an idiot. Eventually, the player regroups and rescues Gandalf, Astarion, and a woman named Counselor Floric. Floric explains that the mansion was attacked by the Drow, and Grand Duke Ulder Ravengard was kidnapped. Floric asked us to rescue the Grand Duke, but the team was in critical health. So instead, we head back to the Emerald Grove to rest and resupply. Back at the Grove, the player remembers to talk to Will, and we discover that he too was a scam victim, and the Grand Duke is his father. He joins us to save the life of both his own and his father, and the party welcomes him. We gathered our supplies and ventured forth once again. In episode 7 of Baldur's Gate 3, we start in the camp, where we meet up with Gale. Gale admitted that he has an urgent magical condition. He says he needs to consume the magic of artifacts in order to keep himself alive, and implies that if he doesn't, something bad will happen, not just to himself, but to other people around him. Gale is secretive about the details of his problem and the consequences of not draining an artifact of its magic. The player, however, has played a game where a magic-eating bomb was implanted into the main character, so he already has a good idea of what Gale got himself into. The player gives up magical gloves that the party didn't need, and Gale slurps up the magic like an alcoholic in relapse. As Gandalf watches on, he thought to himself,
Damn. He do be crazy and insane, but I'm sure the others will be more normal.
The other party members see Gale's appetite for magic, and they were accepting of him, not because it's okay to hide secrets from your comrades, but because Gale is the only person who can magic the party to cross gaps and jump to high places. Night falls, and we meet with Astarion, who is naked, because the player forgot to give back his clothes after he died in the fire from the previous episode. Astarion was also drunk because he recently drained a bear of all its blood. He talks about his freedom from his previous master, who liked to control Astarion like a puppet. Astarion mentions that he would like to have powers to control people too. Gandalf, who also died and was stripped naked, thought to himself,
Damn. He do be crazy and insane, but I'm sure the others will be more normal.
In the morning, they continue their conversation about Astarion's master. Astarion reveals his name to be Khazad-dûr Sar and warns Gandalf to be careful of him. The party moves on and they see a Githyanki hunting pack bullying some random knights. The knights are instantly killed by the dragon to show that our party is no match against the big red lizard. Lae'zel approaches the pack, and the dragon-riding Githyanki introduces himself.
You will call me Gestil Kithrak.
Player here, I just want to say, I hate this guy.
Gestil threatened to kill Lae'zel and the entire party just for talking to him, so everyone pretty much hates him. He reveals that they're hunting the scam people who escaped the ship and are looking for a weapon that was on board the ship. Gandalf figures out that the jester in front of them was going to kill them, as not only are they scam victims, but Shadowheart also has the weapon too. Gandalf convinces Lae'zel to play along and act dumb. Lae'zel lied, telling What's-His-Face that the party are her slaves, and she will join them on the hunt for the weapon, but only after properly reporting back to her village. Pineapple Head is pleased to hear about this and leaves. Lae'zel is furious that she had to lie and failed to become an upstanding citizen of her race, but agreed that the lie worked out in their favor. The party camped for the night, and Gandalf broke out into a cold sweat, as the baby seems to be growing inside him. Lae'zel notices this and tries to kill Gandalf before this all happens, as the current economic situation makes raising children an almost impossible task. Gandalf persuades her though, telling her that he just got a fever and he'll be fine in the morning. Lae'zel reluctantly agrees and leaves. Gandalf thought to himself,
Damn. She do be crazy and insane, but I'm sure the others will be more normal.
Later that night, Gandalf woke up to find a really hot and attractive tiefling standing over him. She reveals that she has been the one keeping Gandalf alive all this time. She tells us that the scam baby is not what it seems, and tells Gandalf to collect more of the scams so that he can grow in power. She needs him for something she'll probably not clarify until dozens of hours into the game, and the player is getting really tired of people not telling their plans to the party. The tiefling pushes Gandalf back to the real world, just like how Gandalf's ex pushed him away, and Astarion tells Gandalf that he had a similar dream too. Afterwards, the game gave a tutorial pop-up, but it was unhelpful as the player has not reached the relevant story points yet. This will only be relevant nearly 3 hours later. Gale also needed to eat another artifact to keep him alive. However, he notices that the artifact did not do as much as before, although it still managed to keep his condition at bay. The party continues onto a bridge, but suddenly, intense headaches rack their brains. The party hears the voice of the Absolute, who reveals herself to be not just a simple scammer, but a big-shot CEO. She introduces her 3 vice presidents, and tells the party to aid them in her conquest to spread capitalism all over the world. Shadowheart brings out the artifact, which reminded the player of a muffin, so we're calling it a muffin from now on. The muffin explodes with light, and the Absolute's voice was cut off, and the party finds themselves back on the bridge. Shadowheart explains that her mission was to bring this artifact back to Baldur's Gate, but her memory was wiped to keep the mission in complete mystery, so she has no idea what the artifact is, or why she needs to bring it back to Baldur's Gate. All she knows is that she serves the god named Shar. The player, who went into the game completely blind, doesn't know who Shar is, and didn't get a dialogue option to have it explained to him, so he just lets Shadowheart go. Gandilf, however, thinks to himself,
Damn. She do be crazy and insane, but I'm sure the others will be more normal. Wait, is Will the only one left? Oh no.
The party continues on. But a warning message appears, saying that this is the exit for the next area, and the party is underleveled for it. So Gandalf turns back to finally continue the main quest, and find the entrance of the Goblin Scam stronghold. Gale also finally admits that he has a magical bomb inside his body, and the artifacts he's been eating has been slowly losing its ability to stop it from exploding. So the player was completely right in his prediction that Gale was just the Honkai Star Rail protagonist, and Gandalf is regretting putting a band of crazy people together. In this episode of Baldur's Gate 3, we continue looking for the Druid House Inn, but run into more goblins. The party was quickly overwhelmed, but the player had the bright idea to exit the map by going into a nearby hatch door. The party then re-entered the fight, but this time they luckily ambushed the leader of the goblin pack. The leader begged for his life, and in exchange, told us of a secret back door to the goblin citadel that the party can go through. The party also tries to free a gnome that was tied up to a windmill by the goblins. But the player is an idiot and can't read. Gandalf releases the break of the windmill, flinging the gnome's spirit and body to heaven. The party continues on, finding the back door to the goblin's fort. However, the fort is on the bottom of a steep cliff, so the player sadistically made the party take multiple painful jumps to get down below. The party sneaks past some drunk and sleeping guards, and see a crack on the fort's wall. Gandalf breaks the wall, but in doing so, becomes glitched inside the wall, and wakes up the guards. Gandalf tries to trick the guards, but absolutely fails it, causing the guards to attack. Gandalf is still glitched inside the wall, so the three remaining members fought, but the guards were so drunk that they were easy to defeat. We enter the fort through the crack in the wall, and we discover that we were on the rafters, far above the goblins. We sneak around, and run into Minthara, the leader and dark mistress of this entire operation. We gain her trust by giving her the location of the hidden Druid Grove, which she seeks to destroy. Minthara then asks the party to enter the grove and betray them from the inside, by opening the gates for Minthara's raid to enter. We agree to help her, and she will launch an attack the next day. The party then rests for the night, preparing themselves for the fight. At camp, we meet Withers, who randomly joined the camp without our knowledge. Gandalf let him be, as Withers promises he can revive dead party members to a safe spot. We return to the grove and find it heavily armed and prepared already. Zevla told us to get inside the fort quickly, and we comply. Zevla's scouts noticed the goblins amassing, so they were able to quickly prepare for it. We tell Zevler about the truth of the situation, and how Minthara is about to attack. The goblin army shows up, led by their mistress. With everything leading up to this moment, Zevler gives a grand speech.
I know that you are all afraid, but I also know that you have been fighting your whole lives. We have never been handed the easy choices or the gentle paths, and this is no different. These creatures would take our lives, our children, our future, and we must resist!
Minthara attempts to interrupt by forcing us to open the gate. However, we betray her at the last possible moment and resist her influence. The player didn't need to do all this, by the way, but he just wanted to build up to an epic fight. The final showdown between the Absolute's goblins and the Tiefling refugees with our party begins, with a unit count that would be a nightmare to set up if Baldur's Gate was a tabletop RPG. The fight begins with both sides showing off awesome moves, including giant spiders jumping and tieflings doing epic dodges. Gandalf mows down multiple goblins with a single storm of daggers. Meanwhile, Lae'zel lands 50-50 hits consistently, nearly taking out a tanky giant spider in one turn. Sappers run to the gate and try to blow it up, but we blow up the barrels of gunpowder traps stored on the ground, killing the first wave. A giant orc started throwing goblins and barrels at the top of the gate, putting our archers in danger. A sapper slips through, blowing up the gate. Fortunately, we clean all the enemies at the roof, just in time before the rest of the goons rush through the broken gate. However, both sides have spent almost all of their resources, so the fight started devolving into everyone missing basic attacks and doing a lot of nothing. Special mention goes to Zevler, who spent the last 3 turns missing all his attacks, only to die to the same attack he last used. Finally, Astarion lands the killing blow on the mistress. Gandalf's body suddenly begun to move on its own. His scam baby then pulls out the other scams from Minthara's corpse, and he absorbs the power. This unlocks a new set of powers for Gandalf to get, and the player immediately picks up a power that improves Gandalf's awful hit chances.
I'm just really sick of missing all those attacks.
In this episode of Baldur's Gate 3, we enjoy a victory feast in our camp at night. We meet a few tieflings enjoying their freedom and beer, and we then move on to meet our companions. We meet Astarion, who was bored out of his mind. Gandalf slid into his DMs, offering himself as tonight's entertainment. Astarion agrees to the idea, and says he wants to fuck Gandalf after the party. Gandalf went on to meet his other companions, but much to the player's shock, almost every single one of them also wants to fuck Gandalf. Shadowheart tells Gandalf she wants to fuck him, and is disappointed that Gandalf has already picked Astarion, but encourages them to enjoy their time together. Gale also wants to fuck Gandalf, and jokingly makes a snide comment about how easily Astarion trapped Gandalf in his fingers. Lae'zel acted the most hostile, acting like a scorned wife as she knows she isn't going to get fucked by Gandalf tonight. She even comments how better she is at fudge than Astarion, and how she'll fudge Gandalf like a math homework. Which is to say, she wants to slam him on a desk and do him all night long. Truly, Gandalf had become a Dilf without the player even trying. Gandalf, however, knows what he wants, and Astarion popped out of the trees, just like how Edward appeared in Twilight, blue light filter and all. The two started f***ing each other in a most intense and intimate scene that will definitely get the player in trouble if he posted it here on YouTube. Instead, here's a shot of Gandalf naked and passed out the next morning. Gandalf wakes up to find Astarion's exposed back, which had a magical circle carved on it. Unfortunately, YouTube compression will most likely ruin this and make it invisible. Gandalf asked Astarion if he knew what the magic circle means, but Astarion doesn't know and seeks to find answers. The next day, Halsin offers advice on where to go solve the party's scam baby problem. He suggests to head to Moonrise Towers, but there are 2 ways to go there. He recommended going through the Underdark, a massive tunnel network that directly leads to the tower. Another path is to go over land, but the party has to go through a cursed place full of deadly shadows. It is far more dangerous than the Underdark. However, because Will's father might be there, we prepare for the overland trip instead.